Interdimensional War by Dagaan Galakticos. Chapter 2. But that's not my point, Joey. It's not about you and becoming famous. My point is that what has happened is rare in the extreme, and keeping a diary about it could help you keep track of what's happening. Yvonne was sitting across from me at my kitchen table, her green eyes flashing, silky red hair swaying as she rocked side to side while strangling her mug of tea with evangelistic fire now that we were into the mystical mysteries that are her home ground. It was a week after the dinner at Spencer's. Bush had been reelected, and a dead numbness hung in the air. She was wearing jeans and, coincidentally, the short-sleeved peach Angora sweater that had tortured me at Spencer's. The fuzziness of it made my hands itch to pet it like a kitten. When she'd called to say she was coming over, I'd put on a green plaid flannel shirt over a dark red t-shirt so that I wouldn't incite her wrath over my Walmart dress style. Too late, I noticed that I matched my tablecloth. "Isn't a diary what Girl Scouts keep about their ponies, Yvonne?" I grinned sarcastically. Yvonne had heard what had happened to me after the fall off the ladder, and she'd come over with a video called The Commitments and a six-pack of my favorite beer to interrogate me. The movie was about a bunch of Irish kids that start a soul band. It was great. While the video played, she'd actually cooked us dinner. Garlic-breaded tofu and cabbage diapers. Yum! And generally demonstrated real warmth and concern. I soaked it up. She'd heard it through the grapevine, meaning Lena, the experiences I'd been telling Spencer about, and she'd come over to see how I was handling it. But the idea of a 36-year-old guy keeping a diary of his dreams made me feel ridiculous. That was for her New Age pals with their pie-in-the-sky eyes and tarot cards that made confusion romantic. I'd resisted all that hocus-pocus this far and wasn't about to cave in now. Diary, record, journal, whatever. God, the way you react to words is like you're straight out of the 50s. She strangled her cup of tea some more. "Yeah, when men were men," I said, knowing it would be a stinger to her. Half our arguments had always taken place around gender fencing, but also half our fun. She snorted. "My point, Joey, is that people need to know such things are possible." Her voice was like velvet with a daycare kind of tolerance, trying to make her point to the problem child. I sniggered. One of my main problems with Yvonne is that she always has to make points. Though, on the other hand, when I put it that way, Yvonne has a couple of really nice points. "Write it down while it's still fresh in your mind." She was getting exasperated and looked out the window into the backyard, where the setting sun was peeking through a line of purple clouds on the horizon, making my cholla cactuses cast long violet shadows across the yard. In the distance, the black Mesa Badlands skyline towards Los Alamos looked violet and powdery through a purple cloudburst. My dog Neutron was staring in the bay window at us, tilting his head side to side as though he wanted the volume turned up. A couple of pallets of adobe bricks that would eventually be a wall around my cactus garden was developing dark brown spots as the rain hit it. A pile of blood-red flagstones that was piece by piece becoming the patio floor was growing maroon polka dots. I'd read a book when I was a kid called My Secret Garden and had always wanted my own. It had got chilly. The cold has a stupefying effect on us here in the Southwest after endless months of cloudless sunshine and radioactive heat. We become like lizards in air conditioning, slow and dopey. I had the oven on with the door open because Yvonne looked chilled in her short-sleeved sweater. With the cold rain spattering the windows, her peachy presence warmed the whole house. "I just don't have time, Yvonne," I whined. "When I get home from working for that yuppie bitch, I feel like my jumper cables are fused. You know what she said yesterday?" Yvonne groaned into her cup of tea. that I owed her for the 3 days it rained last week when I couldn't work. Does she realize that if I'd had the concrete truck go across her front yard while it was all muddy, there'd be tire tracks a foot deep that would have stayed there for 5 years? No. Yvonne was practicing yoga breathing. She said to me, a professional would have found some other aspect of the work to work on. She said those very words, like I was a high school kid or something. Does she know anything about building? Just thinking of the tall, skinny divorce lawyer and her pinched, snippy voice still rattles me. You're not writing the script of the Titanic, dearie. Yvonne completely ignored what I'd just said and stayed on her mission. Just take a half hour here and there to put down the facts as you would tell them to me. She made her voice low and breathy to imitate me.
I went out of body again last night. I woke up standing in the dark. The clock said 2:15. I went to the fridge, got a beer.
I noticed that when she imitated me, she used the same voice she gave to Neutron planning his day.
First I'll pee on the lattia fence in the corner, then I'll scare the shit out of the cat, then I'll go over and eat the corgi's breakfast.
I laughed. Once, the lawyer was stuck in my throat. Yesterday she said I should pay for the speakers and wiring, I added, because now they're part of the wall and should come with the original bid for the wall. Can you believe that? All of it was extra. None of it was in the original bid, and she knew this when she agreed to have me added on. I swear they teach these people to screw you. That's what a college tuition buys these days. They think spontaneity and human warmth are vulnerabilities. Red flags telling them where there's blood to suck. Yvonne was rolling her eyes, hugging herself and rocking side to side in melodramatic anguish. Here he goes, she said, rolling her eyes to heaven. This was like old times. Well, this lawyer's only following the lead of the corporate elites and the politicians, isn't she? I asked Yvonne. Look at America. We use 50% of the world's resources and only make up 6% of its population. Don't you think the other 96% of Homo sapiens has an opinion about this? They know their tungsten or bananas or oil is being hijacked to America through some puppet government that lives in a energy-sucking mansion surrounded by CIA-trained commandos. Venezuelan mothers see Pamela Anderson on satellite, jumping out of a sports car and running down a beach, laughing with her well-fed tits bouncing as a weightlifter chases her into the sand dunes, while that mother doesn't have food or medicine for her children. Don't you think those children are going to grow up with an attitude of revenge? My God, how you exaggerate things to protect your opinions, Yvonne said. If 94% of humanity felt American politicians were unjust, they would report it to the United Nations, who would let the American people know, and we would do something about it. Yvonne, your awareness of political reality is the same as how bourgeois Nazis felt when Hitler was killing off his rivals. Good people can never believe there is real evil in their midst because evil lies with such conviction. Yvonne pouted and rolled her lovely eyes some more. The same corporations that place puppet governments in places like Guatemala to control their bananas and Uganda to control their rubber own the radio and television stations that broadcast news to us. We know what the corporations want us to know, and no more. Do you know why there are 10,000 millionaires in America? Past life karma? She looked a little doubtful saying this. They have it because the poor, landless, uneducated, underfed masses don't have it, I said glumly. You have an absurd sense of the dark side of life, Joe, and it's the result of your not dealing with your own dark side. You choose to identify with poverty, limitation, lovelessness, and so you manifest bitterness and dissatisfaction in your life. If you would just let your right brain talk to your left brain once in a while, you could start some internal relations. Yvonne, your version of life is so buried under sprinklings of saccharine sprinkles that you can't see murder happening under your own nose. If the corporate elites who manipulate half the countries of the world to steal their resources want to, don't you think they're going to use economic pressure on the working classes of America to keep us in our place? The corporations have hijacked America. They don't care about democracy. They just want power. Yvonne put her palms together and looked up to heaven for help, but that didn't stop me. America has become a country of the elite, for the elite, and by the elite. Working people, people who labor, carpenters, nurses, farmers, the same people who snatched America out of the teeth of predator kings, are today looked on as inferior peasants rather than as the backbone of their own country. How is it that one or two arms manufacturers and a handful of oil and pharmaceutical companies are more important than 280 million workers? Yvonne blew out all her air. Dearie, you've got to lift your mind above these things. Money is just energy. People get what they need to fulfill their karma. You create wealth in your mind. Yvonne had her angel look on, infinite understanding and compassion as she delicately arched her spine. So this yuppie bitch deserves a house that covers 3/4 of an acre and vacations in Nepal and Bali because she's so spiritually advanced? I asked reasonably. Maybe. Maybe. I can just hear her talking with her friends. You look kind of unhappy, Harold. Maybe you need a divorce. Why don't you call me at the office? I don't know how it is that you always attract these women that want to test you. Yvonne has an electric femininity. Magnetic waves of it were pulsing out like radar and activating my sonar systems. She was framed inside my fading, dusty, black and white poster of Emilio Zapata on the wall behind her. I could see the ruby reflection of her hair in the glass when she tossed her head so that her hair bounced when she emphasized her points. I didn't attract her, I said, exasperated. It was like two people talking on cell phones to other people who weren't present. I gave her the best of 4 bids, plus she knew someone I'd built a carport for her. I sneered at her. Well, you still attracted her. You were brought together for a reason. My God, she sounded like a prissy schoolmarm from Little House on the Prairie saying, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." This party-line liberalism is its own kind of fascism. Why was such a fine woman wasted on this oatmeal mush mentality? Oh, my God, now here she goes. A smile escaped me as I said it. I really liked having her in my kitchen. Of all the people I know who should suddenly start astral traveling, it would be a beer-swilling construction worker who still builds model airplanes. She put her hands behind her head and arched her spine so that her breasts pointed at my third eye. Oh, my back, she moaned. I think you mean a landscape contractor, not a construction laborer. Bit of a diff there, sweetie. And your spiritual pals with perms also live in houses, you know, I said. Someone has to build them. He had naturally curly hair, and we only knew each other for a week, and that was an eon ago, so why don't you drop that one, or do you want to discuss Estefana, the topless dancer from Rio? She wasn't a topless dancer. She was when I saw her. Well, you had your new squeeze, so I got one too, so I ran out of arguments. Well, we weren't married, she said the word with an old English aristocratic accent. Married. Married? I choked out the word. Why had we split up? Why had we got together in the first place? It was all a confusing mess of contradictions to me now. But having Yvonne sitting across from me at the kitchen table, her lovable smile, the warm peach colors of her with the cold gray wet sky outside, steam rising from the tea kettle on the stove, the homey warmth of the oven drifting over us was stirring loving memories. Baby, let's not go there, okay? She said. I think something serious is happening to you, she said, petting the checkered tablecloth. You mean like insanity? In this book, she said, tapping the book she'd brought over that sat in the middle of the table. After he starts having OBEs, Monroe gets scared that he's going insane and goes to a psychiatrist. I looked at the book. Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe. I grunted. This thought had sort of crossed my mind. I was putting up a good show of unconcern about it to Spencer and Lena, and now to Yvonne, but ever since smacking my head on the flagstones, I'd been floating out of my body and flying around seeing things and having intense dreams. Lena gave me her nurse's opinion that it was a mild concussion and that I should stay home and watch videos for a week. But I couldn't abandon the job, and we were so near completion. But I was afraid that I could float out of my body while, say, using a table saw. Or what if it happened when I met a hot babe? You know, if you're going crazy, keeping a record of the events could help someone figure you out if you suddenly become catatonic. It could be cheaper than, say, a full frontal lobotomy. Yvonne embraced herself as she leaned her elbows on the table and gave me her practical look. Have you any idea what lobotomies run these days? She asked in her no-nonsense voice as she bounced against the table. She sat back and ran a finger along the green plaid tablecloth caressingly. Her beautiful hands and gentle feminine motions reminded me for a moment of how much tenderness we had shared. Can you still get a driver's license after you get a lobotomy? I asked, swallowing involuntarily. I couldn't quite meet her eyes. She knew me too well. Oh, sure. The way people drive? She got up, walked around the table, came up next to my chair, shoved the table back with the meat of her butt, and sat on my lap. She knew me all right. Is it cheaper to get a partial lobotomy? I asked, wrapping my arm around her hip and kissing her protruding lower lip. Sweetie, you already have a partial lobotomy. You're a male. She laughed and kissed me back, going for the full honest territory in the middle. I used what was left of my partially lobotomized brain, trying to pull her sweater up out of her jeans as she tucked her elbows in to make it more difficult. Just try and write some of it down while it's still fresh in that pretty little head of yours, will you? Huh? I tugged, she pouted, and arched her spine so that she was taking it away and pushing it forward at the same time as she let me kiss her. You little witch, I said, sort of fake snarly, still tugging. Is that a yes? She made her eyes wide like Little Red Riding Hood. Yes, I said, like a zombie in a trance, looking into those beautiful, familiar cat eyes and feeling the warm, dense weight of her on me. She raised her arms high over her head, wiggling all her fingers, and gave me her biggest smile.